Technology has the potential to bring communities closer together and enhance the living environment. The question is how that can be done. In an extensive interview with CNA, Geraldine Yap sat down with two ministers helming the Build pillar under the Forward Singapore exercise on the important roles that technology in the community will and should play in Singapore's future.
We know the Forward Singapore exercise was launched to renew and refresh Singapore's social compact for the next decade and beyond. And so much of this is contingent on our sense of community. So I'd like to ask both of you, how do you see our community and living environment changing in the next 10 years or so, and how should Singaporeans adapt?
One of the key trends is increased diversity. And this means that people's living habits, expectations of one another will evolve over time. The pandemic, I think, has also made some very profound changes to the way we live, work, and play. So, for instance, in the residential environment, you see more people staying at home. There is more working from home. There is no better time than now for us to reforge some of our norms and to articulate expectations that have evolved.
One of the things about diversity is that it can pull people apart, or there are ways in which to bring them together, and that's always been a very big part of how we design our living areas. There are very deliberate things that are part of the HDB landscape, and the idea of the void deck is that it's a place for people to just bump into each other. You have diverse communities coming together to live in this kind of high-rise setting. How do you still recreate the kampong spirit? Apart from continuing to strengthen that element of our built environment, it's to ask the question of how technologies could help, and whether digital technologies in particular could add something to this. So I'm very excited by the idea that the MCCY is trying to recreate in the digital era, and that is the idea of a digital kampong. And they're doing this under SG Cares, which means that it is a way to enable people who feel for those with less in our society and want to help them. There is also another app called goodhood.sg that basically replicates the same idea, which is how can we make our neighborhoods for good? It means that there will be people in our midst who notice that some others are in need of help, and they want to organize themselves, in order to be able to provide that help. It could be help to vulnerable seniors who perhaps are living in isolation, and they need company, they need support. There could be children who are in need of support. So these are the different ways in which digital technologies can also promote the idea of gotong royong, and to bring about that sense of kampong in the digital age.
You brought up a point about social isolation. So recently there was a case of a mother and son who died alone at home, and it took a few days before their neighbors or anyone found out that that had happened. How do you see technology and the community playing a part in tackling this problem of social isolation?
I think cases like these are very tragic. The Municipal Services Officers partnered with MSF to create a Help Neighbours feature on our One Service app. And the idea is that users of the app can use it to alert the agencies when they see, for instance, elderly whom they are concerned might be isolated, who might be vulnerable.
I think what Anne has described is precisely how we should be thinking of technologies, including digital technologies. They add to the social support that we are trying to weave together, to help Singaporeans.
SMS, one of the goals under Forward Singapore is also to better engage communities on municipal issues. So can you tell us about the progress that's been made on this front and how your ministry plans to build on this?
Beyond just collecting feedback from people and dealing with it, we also hope to go upstream. Let's talk about some of the sources, or some of the reasons why we actually get feedback or complaints further down the road.
What were some issues that dominated discussions in the Forward Singapore engagements, and how are you looking to overcome some of these issues?
Well, I can share one themed engagement that we've been doing, and it has to do with dealing with neighborhood noise. There was a lot of sharing, of individuals' experiences, but also some sharing of examples of solutions that people have tried on their own. In some cases they were successful, in some cases perhaps less so, but all that has been very helpful in shaping our thinking on what to do next.
Yeah. Well, I think also in more recent times, people who have attended dialogues or taken part in group discussions are also aware of climate issues. They are concerned about sustainability, and they also want to know how they can play a part and be active in helping to preserve our quality of life in a sustainable way.
Another issue that we're going to have to deal with, or we are already dealing with, is the aging population. We know that 1 in 4 Singaporeans is going to be over the age of 65 by 2030. And much has been said about narrowing the digital gap, especially for seniors. So, Minister, what role do you think technology and digitalization are going to play in this area?
Yeah, technology is sometimes very frightening. And the idea that you reach a point in your life and you say, do I still have to learn this stuff, because, I'm not comfortable with it. And I think we want to be very sympathetic to these kinds of concerns and try and help seniors to come along with the whole of society. What probably matters most to them is that I'm living longer. Can I live healthily? Is there some way in which I can be helped, to take care of myself better? And actually, digital technologies has potential to do that. Already today, your phone probably serves up personalized, collection of your photographs, on special occasions. Imagine that it can be applied to helping you keep track of your activities that are health related.
Absolutely.
Can it remind you, for example, that this is a good time for you to get some exercise in? Could it, for example, easily link you up with friends who also have time so that you can go have a game of badminton? We want to get to a point where actually the technology doesn't feel like I'm working for it, but actually it's working for me.
And finally, I'd like to talk about the heartland shops. These small businesses are an important part of the community, but they are increasingly facing challenges due to the pandemic and also, the rise of e-commerce, even as they themselves look to digitalize. So how are both your ministries working to future-proof our heartland businesses to help these shops to, not just survive, but to thrive in this rapidly changing environment?
Well, I think in the first place, we recognize our heartland merchants and our heartland shops as part of the community. We don't think of them purely as businesses, but with the changing retail landscape, their businesses have been affected. How do we help them to be part of the future? We have, for example, an SMEs Go Digital program. Starts with very basic stuff. How can you enable your customers to make e-payments? And then for those that are a little bit more ready, having a web page, or even get onto some sort of a e-commerce platform. We've already been able to support about 80,000 SMEs, and we'd be very keen to support even more.
In fact, what Minister has shared, also we hear this being echoed in our engagements. We can see that actually the awareness and the readiness to go digital is much higher than ever before.
We have to keep in mind that technology is to enable us. It's not to replace our human interactions. And being invested in that human interaction is just as important as enabling each one of us to use, technology, digital technologies in particular, with greater confidence. They go hand in hand together.
when you think about the built environment, it's never there on its own.
Yeah.
It's always there to facilitate community bonding.
Yes.
And with digitalization too, I think it's also the same thing. It's a different kind of built environment almost.
Absolutely. So when we say that we're not done building Singapore, I think we should mean it in the physical sense as well as in the sense of how we strengthen our emotional ties between different communities
Yes.
and amongst all our citizens.